I wish I could tell you that this all-electric F-150 is just as good as any of the others, but I can't, and that's because it's better. For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that. Okay, look, this thing might not be better than the rest when it comes to traditional truck stuff like towing long distances or driving from one faraway job site to the other and back home again without even thinking twice about it. And I get it. That stuff is very important, especially if you're a contractor who uses your truck every day for truck stuff. But I'm talking about the rest of the time and the rest of the people. There is no shame in having a half ton as a family hauler. But if you're using your truck to, I don't know, shuttle the kids to school or stop at the grocery store on your way home from work, this thing makes a lot of sense, but it also does have some truck stuff. Now, the guys at TFL Truck, they already covered the towing thing quite extensively. I think we're all aware of the struggles that this thing has with a trailer hooked up to the back. But we do need to talk about some of the stuff it can do, which includes towing, I don't know, 7,700 pounds with the setup this one has, or up to 10,000. It's also got some cool stuff like a smart hitch, so it'll actually kind of tell you where to put stuff on the trailer. Right here on the screen, it's also got smart scales, so it'll tell you how close this thing is to payload. Right here on the screen, there's this little bar, and it indicates how much payload you have in the truck and how close you're getting to that maximum capacity. And that is very slick. That is the kind of technology that something like this offers versus a more conventional truck. Just very modern, and I really like that thoughtfulness. But you know, we should talk about the way it drives the rest of the time, because again, that's what you're doing most of the time. And it starts with how docile and smooth the drive is. We're going over some train tracks here, and it is incredible just how smooth and comfortable this thing is. It's not on air suspension, but it definitely feels like it. It's on coils in the back, which, yes, is new. I know a lot of you truck folks out there are going to complain about that, but I don't have a problem at all because it does make this thing that much smoother. It is very relaxed to drive, and a big part of it does come down to how it's powered. So hey, maybe we should talk about that. Now, every F-150 Lightning has twin electric motors, one that powers the front wheels and one that powers the rear ones. So yeah, that makes it all-wheel drive. Now, unlike most trucks, that all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive system, you can't control it. It is always engaged since it's electric, but that's perfectly fine with me because it means you don't have to think about it. You can lock the differential if you want, but you don't have to engage a transfer case like you normally would. Yes, even with an automatic setting. So it's just one less thing to think about. And then depending on the battery size, power does change. Now, torque is the same. It's 775 pound-feet regardless, which is so much. It's what makes this thing quick. Not that that matters. This is a truck. But when you look at the batteries, with the 96 kilowatt hour battery pack, this thing makes something like 452 horsepower, but that jumps to 580 when you go with the 131 kilowatt hour battery pack. That's in this one I'm driving. And it also means a ton of range. Just like any other EV, highway driving is what kills the Lightning's range. But let's say you're the kind of contractor that does a lot of jobs around town. The 370 kilometers the smaller battery pack is supposed to provide should be perfectly fine. And the 515 kilometers you're supposed to get with this bigger one is even better. And that means if you do need to hit the highway, you should be able to cover at least 400 kilometers before you need to stop and charge. And when you do, you can do it in a hurry because this thing has DC fast charging capabilities. You can hook up to a 150 kilowatt station, which is what I did the other day, and I added 70 kilowatt hours, so a little more than half the battery pack's capacity in 47 minutes. That is very quick. So let's say you get to the job site, you've got a full battery pack, but there's no power. No need to worry because every Lightning comes with a 9.6 kilowatt inverter built right in. That makes this thing a mobile generator on wheels. Back here, there's even a 30 amp twist lock outlet, so you could conceivably plug in a 240 volt welder to the truck and weld all day without the need for a separate generator or power source. And speaking of which, if you install one of Ford's 80 amp Pro Power chargers at home, you can reverse cycle the battery. So if there's a power outage, you can power your house right from the truck's battery. That is pretty incredible. Unlike the Chevrolet Silverado EV that's on its way, that's built on a dedicated electric vehicle platform, this F-150, it shares the ladder frame that the regular F-150 rides on. But you know, it's reasonably well masked in terms of ride quality. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but you know, having that battery pack down low, it acts as sort of like a permanent payload. So it keeps that front to back pitching to a minimum, the stuff that you usually get with an unloaded pickup truck. There is still a little bit of it, but it's nowhere near as bad as the regular F-150, or in fairness, most half-ton trucks on the market. The thing that stands out more here is the unsprung weight of the wheels. When you go over potholes and stuff, they just really pull at the suspension. You can feel that weight really tugging away at each corner. But otherwise, it's not so bad. I do like the ride quality a lot. And the other thing I really like is the regenerative braking. Didn't even touch the brake pedal there. Super cool. I have the one pedal mode engaged, and that means regenerative braking does the job. It uses the electric motors to recover kinetic energy and bring this truck to a stop. Honestly, outside of emergency situations, the only time you need to touch the brake pedal is when you're shifting from park to drive or reverse. It is awesome, and think about how huge and heavy this truck is. A very cool feature to have. Otherwise, this thing combines the best parts of the regular F-150 with some modern touches. So it's really spacious in here. It's really simple overall, but it does look updated and cool because it's got this massive touchscreen that's borrowed from the Mustang Mach-E. I do like it as a sort of showpiece, though I've had the same problems that I had when I first tested that thing. Primarily, Apple CarPlay. The connection has booted me off quite a bit, especially when I first picked this thing up. It did not want to stay connected to my phone no matter what. Just while I was driving, it would constantly boot it off and then it would reconnect on its own. That's kind of annoying. But again, as a tech showcase, I do get it. I just miss the regular F-150's buttons and switches. I don't like having to tap these little icons, especially for the HVAC, the heated and ventilated seats that come in this one I'm driving. I really like when you don't even have to look down to do that stuff. You can just do it by feel, whereas when it's a touchscreen, it all feels the same, so you can't do it. It is distracting, but otherwise, it's got all kinds of cool stuff built right into this touchscreen, including a ton of advanced safety features. So this thing's got all kinds of cool stuff like lane keep assist, forward collision warning, blind spot monitoring that will keep an eye out if you have a trailer hooked up to the back. You just program in the dimensions. That's really cool. And then it's also got adaptive cruise control with this lariat trim. But if you add an advanced package that adds something like $1,200, it's actually really reasonable. You get Blue Cruise, which is Ford's hands-free adaptive cruise control system, so you can cruise along on the highway without your hands on the wheel. It's not quite as good as GM Super Cruise because it won't change lanes on its own, but it does work really well. And it doesn't take long to get used to it, which I really like. One thing I don't like, I don't understand why Ford does this, but if you want to activate Blue Cruise, you have to have the companion app hooked up. When I picked this thing up the other day, it did not work. Adaptive cruise control worked, but for the hands-free functionality, all I had to do was register the vehicle to my garage in the My Ford app, and then I got a notification that said your Blue Cruise has been enabled. Kind of weird. It feels a bit like one of those websites like Pinterest where you can't just look at it, you have to have an account. Bothers me, but I don't know, maybe that's just me. Just strikes me that not everyone is going to want to use that app, but the app is really cool because you can set charge times, you can start it, you can use the phone as a key. Very cool stuff. And we should talk about pricing, but before we do, I know getting your hands on one of these things is difficult, and so is paying MSRP, but that's all I can talk about. I can't sit here and talk about how much certain dealers might be selling them for, because that would take me all day. That would be a dedicated video and it would change all the time. All I can talk about is MSRP, how much Ford thinks you should pay for this thing. And that's 70 grand to start, because don't forget, freight is not negotiable. So in Canada, the truck starts at just a shade over $70,000 before tax. And then it's about 13.5 grand more if you want this big battery pack, which also applies to this one I'm driving, the Lariat. That's about 82 grand before tax. So this one I'm driving, it's like 95,000 bucks, but then with the options it has, it is a six-figure truck. And yes, that is a lot of money, but then again, this is a lot of vehicle. To recap, I love how smooth and docile the Lightning's drive demeanor is, the way it blends the best traits of the regular F-150 with electric goodness, and all the ways you can use the battery to power stuff other than the truck. I don't like that it's so expensive, but that's to be expected with this much modern EV technology. I'm just gonna say it, I think the F-150 Lightning is the most important vehicle of my lifetime, at least to this point. And it also happens to be really well executed. Maybe it can't do traditional truck stuff with the same sort of pay-no-mind proficiency as a gas-powered pickup, but this thing is part of the precipice of a fundamental shift in how and what we drive, tow, and haul. You know, change is never without resistance, and we're definitely seeing that pushback when it comes to electrification. But the reality is, it's on its way whether you like it or not. Thankfully, when it comes to the F-150 Lightning, there's plenty to like.